All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So, the Steel Path is out. What is the Steel Path? For those of you that are uninformed, that is the name that they went with for what is hard mode. It is out and released, and let's talk about it. So, basically, what hard mode is you're going to go and talk to Teshin on a relay after you have completed every single mission on the regular star chart and done an arbitration, and then you will unlock the Steel Path. The Steel Path adds enemy level plus 100, and enemy health, shields, and armor are boosted to 250% of their normal values. Also, there is an always active 100% resource drop chance booster and mod drop chance booster. So, you'll get more mods and more resources for fighting these enemies. So let's go into this and talk about where you're going to start. So you can start on either Earth or the Kuva Fortress, because the Kuva Fortress is kind of off by itself. But usually you start on Earth, and you go through the planets in the order you'd expect. You do not have to redo junction requirements, but you do have to fight the specters that are on the relays. So it's basically going through missions that you have already done previously at boosted levels to, see if you can get through them, and you earn mastery for it. The junctions and all that will add up to the same amount of mastery as would come from the previous completion of the star chart, which is 27,501. I have about half that or so, and I've been playing for about 12 hours-ish to get that far. Now, you might be asking, what are the rewards for this, and why would you want to do it outside of the boosters, let's say? Well, outside of the boosters, mission rewards across the entire star chart appear to be completely and entirely unchanged, except Eximus units can drop these steel tokens, essentially, which will allow you to purchase things from Teshin. These include an armor set for your operator, that is basically Teshin's armor, and also 10,000 Kuva, and a relic pack for 15 each, and also a stance forma. Now, that 15 each is an important number because for these steel tokens, you get them from Eximus, and we do not know the exact drop rate. But also, you get 2 of them per planet you have completed. And looking at this, I have completed 7 planets and gotten the trophies for each of them, which means I have gotten 14 tokens that are guaranteed to me. And along with these, you also get emotes, which we'll be showing as well. So if we were to go in here and look at our steel count, we have at least 14, and then we have a bunch that we should have gotten from drops. So I have 23 total after playing for 12 hours. That means I've gotten a grand total of 9 from Eximus units. And I would like to point out that on hard mode, it seems we have a boosted chance of invaders on every single mission. So I've seen squads upon squads of Eximus attack me and drop none of this. So these things are exceedingly hard to come by. Getting less than 1 per hour while going through the star chart is rough, to say the least. And that means that the cost of getting 3 relics for 15 of these is hilarious at best, and getting 10,000 Kuva for 15 of these is also hilarious at best, as you can do way, way, way better than that in just regular farms for either of those things. So that is terrible. And as we've talked about before, stance forma is completely useless, and you can just use regular forma in the place of it in pretty much 100% of all cases. So that leaves the armor set to be the main reward from collecting these Steel Essences tokens. That armor set costs 85 in total. So it's going to be quite a hefty sum of hours that you're going to have to put into these missions in order to gain enough to get that outfit. Now, of course, I am regularly going through the star chart and not target farming Eximus. However, with the amount of Eximus I've seen, and me and my squad killing them at every single opportunity we've been given, including in vaults and such, on different missions, I'm going to say that it's not going to get a ton better, and it's going to take quite some time to farm this out, given that nobody finds an insane way to spawn a ton of Eximus. So, how are the emotes? How are the emotes on each different planet? Well, if we go into the emotes, got the Earth one here, but let's look at first with Earth. Pops up the icon here, and you do this pose, and then we can look at Mars, which will pop up the icon here and do this pose, and then we can look at Lua. We'll pop up the icon here and do this pose. And as far as I know, every single one of these emotes is just that. You get a JPEG and the same emote. So after you have one of these, for all intents and purposes, unless you have a particularly favorite planet, you have all of them. Also, in addition to that, you'll notice that right here you can see this is what Lua looks like. And the trophies are maybe not as game accurate as you might like. If we look at the trophies here, you've got Earth, Mars, and then we got Jupiter, Europa, and Ceres, and those all look fine and good. Those look fantastic. I like them. Then if you come over here, this is the moon, which, just for quick comparison, I'll put the moon on the right side of the screen here, the actual moon in Warframe. These two things don't look the same. They're somewhat similar, but what this moon trophy is just a JPEG of the actual moon, I'm to presume, on a sphere, as opposed to what the moon looks like in Warframe. And considering that the moon is one of like the most prominent and important places in the Warframe universe as far as, you know, the story of the game is concerned, with the second dream and all that, I would think that this trophy would have been given a little bit of extra care as opposed to much less. However, that is a trifle when considering what has happened to Phobos. Yes, this is supposed to be Phobos. Once again, on the right side of the screen, you'll see what Phobos actually looks like in-game, and let me tell you, it's not a sphere. Not even close. Not even close to a sphere. It is more of an asteroid than anything else, and that's baffling to me. So these two trophies are odd at best, and it's very weird why they look at this. The rest are fine, though. Don't know what happened with these boys. So we have some emotes that are kind of all the same, and we have some trophies that are, I guess, as it stands currently, majority-wise, good, but a little shoddy in spots for whatever reason. And we have an incredibly exorbitantly expensive armor set to get for our operator. And because the rewards were not changed over the course of this entire star chart, there's not much reason to come and do these missions outside of getting the mastery for it, and, you know, getting the unique cosmetics. So after you've done it once, you're done for good. So what we really have ended up here with Steel Path is, this is another island. Because the Kuva and Relic rewards are not even close to anything one might call good, and the stance forma is, of course, kind of a joke, it is just unreasonable to expect anyone would farm anything here, as there's just no benefit to doing so after you get the few unique rewards that there are out of it. That being said, I played for 12 hours, and I'm only done with Earth, Lua, Mars, Phobos, Ceres, Jupiter, and Europa. So there is a fair amount of hours of content here, but I will also say it is not particularly hard mode. We knew this, of course, before this came out, because just slapping levels and EHP on these enemies really doesn't actually make anything more difficult. It kind of just pigeonholes you into builds of that do a good amount of damage, or weapons that are actually decent. So it's more of a gear check than anything else. And that's going to rub some people the wrong way, I'm sure, because a lot of people like to use the weapons that they like, and will be very unhappy whenever they see that the heavy gunner or whatever that they're fighting, or say like the elite lancer, for example, that they're fighting, is level 130, but has the EHP of a level 534 of that exact same enemy. Chunking through level 500 plus EHP levels for barely more rewards with the mod drop chance and resource drop chance boosters is questionable at best if anyone is going to want to do that. Now, I'm sure there's some endurance players in the Warframe community that might like this. But I think for the larger, like broader scope, there is not much appeal here outside of maybe clearing it once just to say that you did or to get the mastery. Now for that, I have, of course, in my previous talking about the test cluster video, suggested a number of changes that could make this more of a long-term piece of content. So let's talk about those again. So basically, I would like to suggest there be designed loot caves on the star chart. Obviously, it would be very, very hard for them to go through every single drop table of every single mission on this entire star chart and make them all good enough for these levels of enemies. But what I don't think would be too particularly difficult would be to take Mars, for example. Spear is generally a mission where you're going to farm a lot of low rank, like let's say Lith relics. You're going to get a bunch of them here. And this is, I would say, a fairly popular spot to farm those on the normal star chart. So I think it would be healthy for DE to take a mission like this and remix it and say, okay, Mars is where people go for these relics, generally, normally. So let's take Alator, a mission that, you know, kind of out of the way. People probably aren't doing it very much. And let's juice this mission in particular up. If people are going to Spear for Lith Relics on normal mode, let's make Alator the place on hard mode. Make it so that every rotation here is Lith Relics and they're radiant. So that means that you're incentivized to come here and like get a rotation C or whatever and get some Lith Relics for your investment. For bringing gear that can handle these much boosted stats and levels, you are getting not only some boosted, like, you know, mods and resources, which is fine, but also you're getting a solid place to farm relics. This, of course, this idea could be copy pasted across the star chart in different spots. Say you want to go to Eris. Eris, we all know, Jinni is a place to farm a lot of Axii relics. Take that and just be like Zabala. Zabala is a survival. It's like, okay, well, on hard mode, survival is going to be the place to get these Axii relics, but they're going to be radiant here, and it's just going to fill the entire drop table. Just taking a few nodes and making them, like, appealing farms can do a whole lot for making it so that this mode is relevant going forward and for incentivizing people to get to these parts. Because if I were to tell a player that wants to farm Axii relics, well, if you go through the Steel Path and you get to Eris, there's actually a really good node for farming Axii relics on Zabala. I think they're much more likely to engage with the Steel Path in general and want to go get those rewards. And that would go for the other places to get the other eras of relics as well. I think that would be a really easy step to making this more like long-term and actually wanted. And those nodes, if they wanted to go like the super extra mile, could cycle and be different nodes every month or whatever. But yeah, as it stands currently, I see no reason to continue to do this content after it has been cleared once and you have gotten the unique cosmetic rewards out of it, which is very unfortunate. And like, there's plenty of evergreen rewards to put on this. It's not just relics. Make a spot for Endo, put it on Sedna. Make a spot for credits, put it on Neptune. Neptune's usually the planet that we expect to have credits on, but put it somewhere else. Like, oh, on one of the nodes on Neptune, you can get like 50k credits on A rotations. Like, hey, people who are in hard mode, generally not going to need that, but I'm sure there are some people that would value a farm like that. And it just encourages people to like come here and like get farms that they wouldn't have otherwise. And I think that would be a nice incentive for people to enjoy this more long-term than they do currently. And if they were to increase the rates that you get the steel tokens, that would also mean that by coming here and doing those farms, they get a little bit of a bonus, maybe a couple extra relics, maybe a little bit of Kuva. Maybe they slowly work up towards that armor. And I think that would be appealing. But with nothing to hold people over long-term, or at least return here whenever there's a new Prime Access or anything, it's going to be really unfortunate for this mode in the long term, I think. However, for those of you that would like to endeavor through this hard mode, I have a couple of builds to suggest. The first and foremost is Baruch. Baruch has done quite well in this, and he is much better suited to this content than he is to the regular content. And the main reason for that is that it's very likely that you are either going to be alone, because this is seemingly not a lot of people playing the Steel Path or not able to play it in general. And even if you do have teammates, they're going to kill slower than normal, which gives Baruch time to build up his meter. Because of those two factors, Baruch is made much better because it's way easier for him to get his meter and stay in his 4 pretty much constantly. Now, obviously, this patch also came with the Souris nerf, but Baruch doesn't really give much of a shit about that. So, this is the build that we have on him. Obviously, this is a very high investment build, and you can go much lower than this and still have a great time. The really important thing here is Reactive Storm, so that you are effective against all different types of enemies with Baruch, and you don't have to change your melee build at all. Other than that, like, this build's pretty normal, I'm gonna say. With that, the primary and secondary don't matter too much, although I would suggest the Kuva Nukor if you're going to be bringing a secondary to pop nullifier bubbles. And then the Coprime is the premium weapon for Baruch in general. And it's worth noting with this, there are 2 styles, I'm going to say. One is if you're running Naramon, and one is if you are running Zeneric. If you are running Zeneric, Reflex Coil is fantastic because it means you can heavy attack, you reset your combo to keep your stat stick stats that last for about 30 seconds, so that you can give Gladiator to your 4. This is what we do instead of the Souris, and this is what we did before the Souris, to get those Gladiator buffs for about 30 seconds at a time before needing to refresh them. Very easy. Venka with Vermilion Storm builds this combo turbo fast, so even if you lose it, it's not really a big deal. And then on Desert Wind, we have this. This is just been generally working for me. I went Viral Heat, as you're still going to proc those in addition to whatever Reactive Storm is changing your impact to. And this has worked out quite well so far, but honestly does not need this much investment either. You could chunk a Forma off this and like drop like Volcanic Edge and still be pretty okay. But yeah, that's the Baruch build for this that I have been running. In addition to that, Korra is still fantastic for this, and also this is what her deluxe skin looks like. Korra running this has been updated. It takes much less Forma than this, but I was just changing to this build. This is utilizing Rolling Guard and Brief Respite, much like Baruch is, because those are great ways to survive against these enemies, because the invincibility is often going to be better than actual EHP against them. But this build, and then as for the stat stick, I am running, instead of the Souris, I just decided to go with the Riven build with the comma that we showed off whenever we talked about how ridiculous the Souris nerf is. If you'd like to know more about the Souris nerf and how it has no point to exist, you can go check out that video. But if you do not have a Riven for whatever reason, you can instead use either the Fragor or the Venka, like we used to back in the day. The Fragor is better if you'd like to go Zeneric, and the Venka is better if you'd like to go Naramon. And this is the build for that. You'll notice it is not much different because all Rivens do is take this build and try and replace as many mods as possible on one Riven. Which, of course, the Riven that I have on the comma replaces Sacrificial Steel and Primed Fever Strike, but that's an entirely separate issue. So, yeah, there's that. Korra and Baruch are fantastic at this mode, and then on top of that, I have also been using a good bit of Rhino. Rhino, obviously, this is my big arcane tanker build, and I have a whole video on how this works, as it's a little bit abnormal. But we're also using the Redeemer, which has been useful for a number of different things as well, and this is just a heavy attack build. So if you wanted a few things to kind of take into here and like look at, because the Redeemer is going to be needed for a few things for a lot of people, I think. Like if you're not going to be doing finishers on the Spectres on the rail, they do have a ton of health, and you'd need something like the Redeemer plus Rhino to get through it. But yeah, that's kind of where things are at current. That's just a few builds. Obviously, there are a number of viable Warframes here. I've been playing even some like Hildrin and Naros and so on and so forth here. So you can still kind of play whatever, but it's just going to change the speed at which you clear. But yeah, that is hard mode as it stands right now. It's a bit underwhelming, but it could easily be given an amount of longevity. And also, you know, if those steel token amounts increase significantly, there's also the potential that you could get a reasonable amount of rewards from just the bonus of playing these missions. But I find it to be unlikely that we would get those steel tokens rates up to the point where that would be happening. but it'd be nice. Who can say? So anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow.